Hey guys, welcome to the 2024 Read Your Bookshelf Challenge announcement. Now, I think this is my 4th year, maybe my 5th, I don't even remember, doing this challenge, and it always comes with a giveaway, $100 gift card. It has very few rules, it's pretty loose, and this year, with the help of my patrons, I feel like we have gone above and beyond. And I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to top this, but I think this is going to be the best Read Your Bookshelf Challenge year yet. So let's get into the details. First of all, if you guys are new here, welcome. My name is Chantel. I almost never introduce myself on my videos because I kind of just view us as friends, but I know every now and then there's new people. So welcome here. And I'm going to apologize for anyone that likes to do my Read Your Bookshelf Challenge in a book club. I feel like I've made things a little bit more difficult for you guys this year. I know there are quite a few people that do it as a book club, but I have kind of an alternative for you guys. So just pay attention here. I'll explain what we're doing. So normally my Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, they're pretty loose. Last year, every prompt played off of the book that you read the month before. And this year we're kind of going like flowchart style-esque. So it's a little bit more complicated. It was a lot more involved in trying to figure out all the prompts, but I'm excited about it. First, we will go into the rules. Number 1, it is called the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, and that is because I wanted to read books off of my shelf. You do not need to read books off of your shelf. You can read like just library books for this. You can read some library books, especially if some of the prompts are a little harder and you don't own books. I don't care where you get your books from. That's the first thing. Number 2, you do need to do this year's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge in order because of how it's set up. You need to read, like January's book first and then February's book. But I am okay if you read January and February's books like in January or something. You don't need to read them exactly in the months that they are allotted for, but you need to do them in order. And I think that's all I have for rules. If I have more as I go, I'll pop them back in here. Now, for the giveaway, every year I do a $100 gift card giveaway, and that will only start in January. I will have a page on my website that I will leave linked below starting in January, or if you are part of my bookish newsletter, I will let you know about that because I don't want people starting before January. I guess that's kind of one of the rules. So come January 1st, I will have the information for the giveaway, but every month that you read a book, you can go in and say, yes, I read this book, and you get one entry into a $100 gift card. So it's a lot of fun. I like it. Okay, now it is time to get into the details of, I have books splayed out in front of me because I always like to give examples of what books I could be reading for these different prompts. And because of how I've done things this year, it means there's even more books set out before me. So like I said before, huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for giving some ideas and suggestions for this. I took a couple people's ideas and mashed them together. So this year we are going to be inspired by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Lucy Maud Montgomery, who are 2 of my favorite authors, but wrote quite different things. And they are going to be the inspiration for the prompts and the different books that we're going to be reading. So how this is going to work is you're going to start off the year by deciding if you want to go on Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's side or Lucy Maud Montgomery's side, and the first prompt might actually make you decide which way you want to go. So I have all the prompts on my phone because there's a lot to it, and there will be a printable, and I do plan on making different templates for on Instagram and everything. That will all either be linked below or else it will be on the webpage that I put up in January, depending when I get it all done. So for January, on the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle side, we are doing Hounds of Baskerville. And so that is to read a book with a dog on the cover. So I went through my books, and the first one that jumped out at me is Where the Red Fern Grows. This is a book that I've been avoiding because I know I'm going to cry, but it has 2 dogs on the cover, so I could read this book for the prompt. And Lucy Maud Montgomery was a notorious cat lover. In the Jane of Lantern Hill book, she actually dedicated the book to her cat Lucky, who I think the cat had already died. Okay, that makes her sound a little crazy, but whatever. She's a good writer. So we're gonna do a book with a cat on the cover, and for that I have The Tarnished Garden. This one has 3 cats on the cover. This one is a middle grade fantasy. It's a secret garden retelling with some fantasy elements. The cover is adorable. So you pick one side and you gotta read either a book with a dog on the cover or a cat on the cover. Then for February, you have to stay on the same side you started with. So if you read a book with a dog on the cover, then your next prompt is Elementary, My Dear Watson, and that is to read a book under 250 pages. And for that, I thought maybe I would read Mrs. Polifax on Safari. This is the next book in the Mrs. Polifax series that I'm going to be reading. It is a mystery series that makes me laugh. I call it cozy espionage. It's not really 100% mystery. It's like spies, but like an old lady. And I should say also, I'm not necessarily going to be reading these specific books. Like, I might have already read this by February, and also I'm not going to be doing both sides. But if you did a dog on the cover, then you have to read a book that is under 250 pages. If you read a book with a cat on the cover, you are going to have Puffed Sleeves, which is a nod to Anne, and that is to read a book over 400 pages. And this is one book I want to read this winter, Spinning Silver. It's got those winter vibes because of this cover, and it is over 400 pages. This is a YA, maybe adult fantasy story. I really want to read this winter. Okay, and then for March, once again, you have to continue with the side that you picked. So if you did dogs on the cover and a book under 250 pages, the next one is Baker's Street Irregulars, and that is to read a book with more than 2 perspectives, more than 2 POV. So I found on my shelf We Hope for Better Things. This one has at least 3. I need to look through the chapters. It might have more than 3, but it has more than 2. And then on the flip side, Kindred Spirits, that is to read a book with 2 points of view. And on my shelf, I have A Bridge Across the Ocean. I find if you're gonna go more than 1 point of view, often like historical fiction is the way to go, because authors like to have multiple perspectives with historical fiction books. Okay, now here's where things change. In April, we have kind of the same prompt. So in April, for the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle side, the prompt is Red-Headed League, and for Montgomery, it's Carrots. So both are to read a book that has a red-headed main character. And for this one, I looked at my shelf and I saw My Contrary Mary. I've heard less than great things about this series, but she has red hair, at least on the cover, so I'm assuming she actually does in the book. This one might be hard. Some of these might be hard. I'm okay if you have to bend the rules a little bit, or maybe you have to work a little harder for this challenge. So this is my possibility. And then here in April is where you have a chance to switch sides if you want to go from the Doyle side to the Montgomery side, or from the Montgomery side to the Doyle side. This is where you have the chance to do so. In May, the Doyle prompt is A Study in Scarlet, and this was suggested on Patreon because this is where Holmes and Watson meet. So the idea was to read a book by a new to you author, and a new to me author sitting on my shelf is Lucy Worsley, and so maybe I would read Jane Austen at home. This one sounds interesting, and I hear it has some humor. This almost made it onto my December TBR. And then for the Montgomery side, the prompt is The Road to Yesterday, and that is a collection of 14 of the Blythe's favorite tales. So I decided you could read a book by a favorite author, and it probably comes as no surprise I put an Ella Montgomery book on this list. This one is Mistress Pat. It's book 2 in a duology that I would like to read because I want to read all her books. Very slowly though, because I want to enjoy them all. Okay, now we are on to June, and the Doyle prompt is The Lost World. This is a science fiction story that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote, and I've read it, didn't love it, but that's okay. I still like his writing. I love Sherlock. And so I thought we should read a science fiction or fantasy book. So one on my shelf that I want to get to that I keep mentioning is 6 Crimson Cranes. this would be a possibility for that month. And then Ella Montgomery, the prompt here is The Watchmen. That is one of her poetry collections. Although, side note, apparently Arthur Conan Doyle also wrote poetry. I want to get my hands on that. So the idea is you read a poetry book, and I actually do have a Lucy Maud Montgomery poetry book, so this is a possibility for me, as are many other books, because I really enjoy poetry. Then in July, we are coming back again. So we will be using kind of the same prompt, and from here you can switch sides if you want. So The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the idea is to read a short story. That's the Doyle prompt, and Montgomery is Chronicles of Avonlea, which is also a short story collection. So either way, for July, we're going to be reading a short story collection. And I had to grab the Miss Marple complete short stories off my shelf. I can't believe I haven't. I started this one, I read some of them, but I haven't finished it. So I would like to do that. That would be good to get done by the end of the year. And then, like I said, you can switch sides here if you want. If you want to switch back to the Doyle or Montgomery side, this is your chance. August, for Doyle, The Adventure of Wisteria Lane, that's one of his short stories. The idea is to read a book with a house on the cover. This was actually, it was quite hard for me. I found an Ella Montgomery book that had a house on the cover. This is Chronicles of Avonlea, which is actually our prompt from the previous month. So this is a collection of short stories. And then for Montgomery, we're going to do Along the Shore, which is to read a book with water or a shore / beach on the cover. And I have, this one's pretty big, A Child from the Sea by Elizabeth Goudge. It has some water and kind of like a shore there. So that's an option for me there. In September, okay, these ones were a little tricky. I made them a little easier, I think. For Doyle, we are doing The Adventure of the Dancing Men. Originally, I had to read a book that involves puzzles, codes, or ciphers, and I left it there, but when I was going through my shelf, I was like, this is pretty hard. So I said, or a mystery. And one I would like to read this next year is the next Dorothy L. Sayers book, which for me is Clouds of Witness, the next Lord Peter Wimsey story. So that's an option for me. And then for Montgomery, the prompt was Kilmeny of the Orchard, and I wanted a book where music is a major part. And once again, looking at my shelves, I couldn't really find one like that I could tell really easily. So I bent the rule and then have added, or just like a historical fiction book. And so I am possibly going to read Luck of the Titanic. This is a historical fiction story I would really like to read about the Titanic. And then October is our last time coming together, and for Doyle, it's Memories and Adventures. That's his memoir. And then we've got the Journals of Ella Montgomery, which are her journals. So the idea is to read a nonfiction book. And one on my shelf that would work is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. I think this is just his memoir. I'm pretty sure. So any nonfiction, it's very broad. This is just one of many possibilities for me. Okay, 2 months left. So November, the Doyle prompt is Moriarty, and that is to read a book that intimidates you. So one that's sitting on my shelf that is intimidating to me is Anna Karenina. Yeah, I don't think I have to say more about that. And then the Montgomery prompt is Jane of Lantern Hill, and because there's kind of it's a bit of a second chance love story. The idea is to read a second chance book, which is one that you previously DNF'd, or maybe like an author that you haven't had very much success with before. One that's on my shelf is Uncle Tom's Cabin. I've started this book multiple times, and I find it so heartbreaking. I find it hard to get through, but I would really like to finish it. So I'd like to start this over, read it through. And then December. This is the time now where we're going to be splitting off. There's 4 different options, and you are either going to go along with Sherlock, with Watson, with Anne, or with Emily. So Sherlock, the prompt is to read a book that has more than 10 books in the series, because there are a lot of short stories involving Sherlock. One of the possibilities from my shelf is some of the Mrs. Jeffries books. So there's like, I don't know how many books in the series, tons. This is a Victorian mystery, currently reading the series and really enjoying them. Then for Watson, you can read a standalone book. A possibility for me is Not If I Save You First by Ali Carter. This is a YA story, and her books are like surprisingly deep but also funny, and I really enjoy them, so that's an option. Then if we're going to Anne, we are going to read a book that has 5 to 10 books in the series, because that's about how many the Anne series has. An option for me would be to read the Six Tudor Queens series. And I started book 1, I never did finish it, but I own 4 of the books in the series, so I kind of want to figure out if I want to read them or not. So this is a possibility if I want to go with the Anne route. And then for Emily, the idea is to read a book in a trilogy, because the Emily series is a trilogy. An option for me is to finish the King Raven trilogy by Stephen Lawhead. So I've already read book 1. Book 2 is Scarlet, so I could go with this one. So I hope this all makes sense. Like I said, I will have like printables and more information on my site and stuff. If you guys have questions, you can leave them below. I think I've commented, like mentioned the most common questions about do you have to read your own books. Oh yes, and if you guys are part of a book club, I would suggest, I mean, you could just use it the way we're using it and let people pick what they want. Or you could just pick like the Doyle side or the Montgomery side and go that way. That would be an option. And if you guys just plan on reading this on your own, it is kind of fun to do this kind of thing in a group. So if you guys have a book club, I would love for you guys to use this for that. And I would love it if you guys would share this video with any of your friends who like to read. This is always a fun one for me. I love organizing this and leading it all year round. And then every month when I share my TBR video, I always share which book I'm going to be reading for the next month's Read Your Bookshelf challenge. So if you're curious to see which books I actually read for it, stick around for the year and watch each of those videos. Thank you so much for being here, guys.